Hi, and welcome back to ConTinual. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and tonight on the panel room, we are diving into one of those really critical topics. We're going to be talking about banned books, especially those books from banned in 2022, but we want to talk a little bit about the history of banned books, why they're out there, and why this topic is so important. But before we dive into all of this fun, let's make sure and see who all has decided to join us. So, Samantha, you are up first.
Hi there, I'm Samantha Bryant. I'm an author. I write the Menopausal Superhero series and some short form horror. It is my goal to be banned someday because I think it will mean that I have written something that really got to people. And I'm that kind of girl that the best way to get me to do something is to tell me I can't. So I've read a lot of banned books.
Not to mention the fact it does help sales. Selah.
Hey, I'm Selah Janel. I write fantasy, dark fantasy, horror, all sorts of things that could get me banned, but I haven't been banned yet, sadly. Working on some short form stuff right now. Have some stuff up on Amazon. Check it out. I also, if there's a banned books list, it's highly likely I'm going to read it. I especially love to advocate for young adult graphic novels and comics that are banned. So that's sort of my area of choice. That's me.
Jenny?
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Captain Kitty Cat series for Doll Books. I also write under a variety of other pen names in all lengths and genres. And like the rest of the squad, our squad goals are all to get banned. I have yet to be banned. Even the books that I had beta readers tell me we're going to cause a fatwa, I have not scored that yet, but the goal lives.
Amy?
I'm Amy Lane. I write, dark fantasy, urban fantasy, gay romance, and every subgenre underneath that. So sci-fi, dark fantasy, that kind of thing. Romantic suspense. I don't know if it counts as being banned or not. I have been fired. I was teaching. And I was fired from my teaching job. Well, okay, they couldn't actually fire me because it turns out that I was not actually writing porn. But because it was LGBTQ and it was 2010, and because at the time the heat level was fairly mild, some of my senior students were like, "Oh, hey, can I read what you write?" And I was head of the the Gay Straight Alliance. And I was like, yeah, I didn't see why not. I mean, it fit right in because they were asking me if they could read a nice, positive romance about young adults, which is what I had happened to have written at the time. And I gave the manuscript to a kid I had known for a long time. And the kid, let's just say, as I was talking to the kid at one point in time about like the year before, and he walked away, and the girl I was with turned around and goes, "I'd like to hit that, but I don't know where that's been." So this kid was not gay, but he was not cowed or embarrassed by anything at all. And I said, is the kid who asked me for this manuscript, is he going to be okay for the kissing scenes and the steamy scenes? He goes, "You know what, let me print that out, and I will just keep those back, and if he feels like he can handle them." And unfortunately, those were the scenes his parents found and turned over to the head of personnel. So I was told that it was a very serious meeting, and we're going to try and have you arrested for disseminating pornography to minors. And the head of personnel was like, "I have a stack of porn this thick in my office," and I was not particularly as afraid as I possibly should have been. I was like, "Jesus, mister, what the hell did you read?" So I am the one person here who has had two lawyers and all, signed documents to say this wasn't porn and nothing about it was illegal.
Lucienne.
And how am I expected to follow up after that? Come on now.
That's not my problem.
But you get the horns. I mean, they try and figure everything.
I'm Lucienne LeBeau. I'm also known as Harlot Oscara and also known as Anne Boucher. And I have written a book that should be banned. It's now entering Silver Hollow. I write LGBTQ horror. Most of my characters are bisexual. And of course, as Amy pointed out, apparently that is automatically dirty and bad. So, and should be banned.
It should be banned.
Lisa?
My name's Lisa Macklem. Most of the writing I do is nonfiction. So I do pop culture reviews for SpoilerTV.com. And my day job is as an academic. So I'm out there teaching as many banned books as I possibly can. So I'm teaching The Handmaid's Tale this semester and The Wars. And I also do a lot of work on graphic novels and other pop culture. So I'm hoping to have a paper published on Maya Kababi's genderqueer coming up soon. So
Yes.
Nice.
And Walter?
Well, I'm batting last, so I got to really take it home. I'm Walter Quigley. I prefer Wally, but I write under the name W.P. Quigley. And I published my first book in anthology of transgressive fiction last year. It's called Chaos Heaven. And everything in it was more or less written to try to get banned. I just put out our first magazine. It's called Double Feature. Lucienne and I are the co-horned chiefs of and the stories that I wrote for this first issue are really, really messed up, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But I do have one claim to fame. This actually happened a couple months ago. I got a death threat through on an email, so that was pretty interesting. I did take it very seriously, but it was kind of a cute little thing, I guess. So.
I never threaten a horror author. They're nice but they also all have a shovel, plastic wrap, and duct tape in their trunk. I mean,
That's true.
Oh my God,
it's
all right over there. But it was just kind of I wasn't expecting that so soon. I thought that was going to happen like a couple of years down the road when I built up a nice hate base, but here we are.
Here we are.
Well, in the year of 2022, we had more than 1,600 books that were banned this year, or now last year. And of the top 10 reasons, according to the American Library Association, number 10 was political viewpoint at 6.5%. Number 9 was anti-family content. Number 8 was use of illegal substances at 12.5%. 16.5% for racism at number 7. Number 6 was violence at 19%. And if they're going with violence, there's a whole lot more out there to be banned. LGBTQIA content was number 5 at 23.5%. Religious viewpoints at 26% for number 4. Number 3, the nice generic unsuited to age group for 49%. Number 2 was offensive language at 61.5%, which means I don't know how any of the books that I know are being written or published are getting out there and done. And last but not least, at 92.5%, is because of sexual content. And just for a few more fun stats out there, who starts the challenges? Who comes out, according to the ALA, and says, we are requesting these books be banned? Well, 39% of the time, it's parents. 24% of the time are patrons of the school, of the library, whatever the case may be. 18% are board and administration. 10% are political and religious groups. 6% actually come from librarians and teachers. I think that at least some of those are probably pushing to get them banned to make more kids read them. 2% come from elective officials, and 1% come from students.
But what percent came from people who read the book?
Yeah.
That would be 0. So let's just sort of talk about, let's kind of go the rounds with banned books and why they're important, kind of how you view banned books. Being a free speech advocate, I am very much a believer that, yes, there are times when it may be appropriate to flag something and say that this is appropriate to an age level, an age group, a reader group. Yes, you may want to tell people there is this content, but for the most part, I believe that most information should be out there and be available to be read and be seen. Now, if they're kids, then this is one of the things that falls to the parents. You know, one of the things that we've seen a lot of over the years with banned books are books that we were obligated to read as students are now being banned by school systems. And again, I think this is just parents that were like, I hated the book when I was a kid. I don't want my kid having to suffer through that. Let's find something else. So let's talk a little bit about, you know, how you guys look at and view banned books. You know, kind of how does this impact you? You know, how do you foresee what's happening in the world and the importance of trying to make sure that these are available? So Samantha?
So I was a school teacher for 27 years. North Carolina finally got me to quit last year, but I was a school teacher for 27 years. And for a lot of those years, I was an English teacher, and I saw a lot of attempts to ban books. And the thing that always gets me is a parent gets upset about a book and doesn't want their kid to read it. I'm okay with that. We can come up with something else for your child to read that will address the same kinds of things. So where do you get off telling me what my kid can read? Because if you have the right to say, oh, no, my kid can't read this, then I have the right to say, hell yeah, my kid can and should read this. So that's the thing that always made me angry and very difficult to hold my tongue so I could keep my teaching job, was that there's a big difference between censoring for yourself and censoring for underage people who are in your care, and trying to make that decision for a broader community and insist that books can't even be on the library shelf on the off chance that somebody will see it, because your values are yours alone. They are not the values of every single person who attends that school, uses that library, lives in that community. So that's where I come down on it. Is I also wonder if you really believe in the strength of your own values, if you're so concerned that reading about a different point of view isn't just reading about it in a book is enough to convert them to a different point of view, maybe you can see that there's something wrong with your point of view in the first place.
Well
Selah?
said.
Yeah.
Cool. So
Anything you want to add to that?
I was going to say, no, they can't. Okay. This is the same argument about women's health care. This is the same argument about everything. No, they can't. What's theirs is theirs, and what's ours is theirs. And that's a mindset. It's been around a heck of a long time, and it's not going anywhere. So we have to fight it in different ways, because you're correct, Samantha. They have no right, and yet they make the right. So.
And it's also fear-based. Oh, no, my child knows that there are gay people. My child will become gay.
My child will read about the gay and somehow be infected with the gay.
Right.
And be infected with the gay.
They're waiting for our recruitment.
You know, I've done a lot of reading, and I still haven't turned into a werewolf or a vampire.
Oh,
You keep waiting, right?
And maybe I'm not reading the right book.
Hours.
I've been in a booth with you. I'm not sure about the vampire thing. Let's be honest.
all right.
It's because you've never seen me in the daytime.
Selah, any thoughts?
Yeah, so I come at this from two different prongs, I guess. So as a horror and dark fantasy author, I think the argument of if, graphic material, that sort of thing, if it's necessary for certain stories or whatever, that's a whole different argument. I mean, you can argue what works for a story, what doesn't, ratings all day, every day. That's a totally different thing. But I don't like the thought of sanitization or artistic expression. So in genres that are helping people work through emotional expression by, exploring fears or exploring dark areas or just really big emotions. I think that's dangerous to say you can't read this or you can't think about this. For years, I also have reviewed manga and comics and graphic novels for a few different websites. And I did sort of lean into young adult titles because no one was really talking about them. I mean, online and stuff, but like locally. And when I would talk to friends who are parents, things like that, they really weren't aware of what was out there. And a huge concern of mine is that most of the titles of especially young adult graphic novels and comics are banned because happen to be written by people of color, by the LGBTQ community, by immigrants. So you were essentially, people are trying to wipe out the experiences of whole groups of people and, erase representation for so many people. That leaves readers of all sorts, they don't see themselves represented, but also, I'm a cis straight woman, did not have these experiences, but I still want to know about them. I want to be able to know what other people are going through. And, that's important to kids. If I wish a lot of these titles would have been out there when I was growing up. I think that, I was lucky to have the progressive and empathetic experiences that I did, but I think it would have been great to have these titles available then as well.
And I think if you look back, you'll at those statistics you read, if you combine sexual content and LGBTQ content, that's like 80% of it.
It is.
And as much as, horror, violence, okay, and I can eat that up. But as much as sometimes maybe we should not let the 6-year-old watch Chucky.
Right.
Okay. Not letting them know that this is what your body does when you pass 12 is not going to stop your body from doing that. And
there's a huge difference between the infamous scene in like Stephen King's It and the very chaste kiss in Raina Telgemeier's drama. Between middle school boys. So huge difference. And the fact that has been on that drama has been on banned book lists for years is ridiculous.
But nobody even mentions it. Yeah.
No, not at all.
Yeah.
Not at all.
That's okay. That's okay. But
there was one manga title I actually went to my library about, not to have it removed, but because I thought it probably should be in the adult section because there was content of minor characters showing full frontal and some scenes that were, in my mind, in line with titles like Attack on Titan and some very adult stuff. And they felt because the American publisher was like, oh, it's teen, it's fine. They were putting it with some of the junior high titles. So that, I will say, that has been the one time and I was voted down on that, and that's their choice. That's okay. But not my preference, but it happens. But it was more, that, like you said, there's a big difference between something like that or Stephen King's stuff versus, just, people existing.
I take just the year I was asked not to ever return to my school.
You too? They did the same thing for me.
Yeah.
They politely asked me to leave after 5th grade. This was Catholic.
Oh, they had paperwork and they were trying to fire. Yeah, well, they tried to fire me. They went back through all my years of blogging to see if I had ever actually done anything they could fire me for. I had not. But that year, I remember taking book reports, and this was 2010. It was before we were so completely digitized. And kids came up to me with Alora's Cave books and said, hey, can I read this for my book report? And I would look at that and go, where did you get that? Oh, that was from the school library.
That's a name I haven't heard in a long, long time.
Right?
Wow.
That's from the school library. And I opened it up, and yes, it was Alora's Cave, but it was Het.
Oh my God.
So it's okay.
Right?
I just think it's hilarious and adorable that in this day and age, people actually think their kids don't know 1,000 times more than they do at their age.
Yeah.
It is
the whole, I'm shielding my precious little darling. Are you now? Does darling have a cell phone? As if they do. Do they have friends? Right? Have they ever seen a television show or movie? You really can't. The only people that can actually control that are the people that keep their children as shut-ins, and they're out there. But it's very ludicrous. I'm the daughter and granddaughter of teachers, so needless to say, the banned books were handed out liberally, and I read them all. Unfortunately, so were the required books, many of which I understand why people don't like to read after they get out of school. Oh my dear God! But anyway, but enough said about Erewhon and some of the others out there. But they know. Touched by an Alien, which is my first book, it's not erotic sex, but it's steamy. I'm on the 1 to 5 scale in romantic scale. I'm at a 5, okay? And people, when it came out in 2010, right? And I had a friend, they do not believe in censorship, and the daughter was like 9. Was she 9? She wasn't 12. She's like 9 when it came out. She can't wait to read the book that her auntie has written, right? And other friends like, no. And my girlfriend's like, no, we don't believe in censorship. If she doesn't understand it, she can ask me. And she didn't understand it. And she asked me, I said, oh, no, that's your mom's job now. No. Contrast, there's a 15-year-old girl on, I think it's FlameNet, something like that at the time was a big reviewing site for YA, who I read her review and literally I could read between the lines. This review was saying, hey, everybody, there's sex in this. I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna have a lot of sales. Thank you, my darling. Right? The kids know how to get it. The kids, I can remember going to the magazine store on the way from parochial school to the library with my friend's younger brother and us looking at the dirty magazines till the owner realized, you kids, get out of here, and we would scamper off. Everybody, if you want it, you can find it. It's so easy. It's so simple. So everyone acting like, oh my God, reading it will be so terrible. At least they'll be doing some thinking versus just watching it. Reading is the most interactive, active entertainment we have that isn't sports related. And watching stuff is very passive. So at least they're using their brain. But, again, the people who are afraid of this, and I can't remember if it was Lucienne or Lisa, but one of them said it was based on fear, and it is based on fear. And it's based on stupid fear. And we can't erase it. We just have to fight it because those stupid people sadly keep getting born every day and getting into public office and in control of lives and all sorts of things. So we still have to fight it. I don't think there's a cure. I think
they don't know how babies are made because they don't read about sex. So they just.
But what? It doesn't matter because those babies still going to get
they keep doing it.
You cannot. That's the whole sex ed. That's the whole sex ed argument. Nature finds a way.
AO3 exists, so they're learning something. So.
Right? Yeah. At least. So my viewpoint was, at least if you're reading my book, you'll know what you should be aspiring for.
Right.
And where that tail came from. But anyway, so let's kind of dive back into, around banned books and the importance that we see, because again, I think there is a big difference between a library putting it into teen versus adult. I think there are relevance there about where you put it. So Amy, from your perspective and having now been through kind of this experience, are there things that from your perspective you would like to see a greater level of restriction put on?
I would like whoever thinks they're in charge of gatekeeping to kind of get their act together. Because it's not that I don't believe there shouldn't be some, there is some stuff. It's not that I don't think my kid can't read it. I think that they would appreciate a warning in front of it. Okay. Violence triggers all 4 of my little dumplings like you could not believe. And 2 of them are almost, well, one of them is 30. Okay. So, that if we're going to gatekeep, if we're going to say, oh, hey, we might not want this in the adult, or we might not want this in the new adult section, or, that we do have to differentiate between the scene in it, which is gratuitous and not necessary in particular, and a chaste kiss between 2 boys. that Alora's Cave, which has a consensual het couple, probably on a trapeze with 6 different toys that I don't know the names of, and 2 cowboys trying to raise a family. That there has got to be, and it doesn't have. I would die if anything I said spawned on a scale of 1 to 10 using decimal points. Where does this fall on the sexual experience? Okay, I would die if there was any such a chart as applied to a library that, oh, hey, this is a 6.2. So obviously it goes in the adult section, and no kid who would see themselves in that character would ever look in the adult section, because that's where they put A Tale of Two Cities. God damn it. But I would like us to get our criteria together and decide what is fear-based. What is a bunch of people who really want to legislate our bedrooms? Would we let them legislate our bedrooms as adults? Why are we letting them legislate what our children know of their bedrooms as children? I would like a criteria that is that looks at how books make us feel. Oh goodness, I'm sorry, I don't know you. You're in the bottom corner of my screen, but you said it very, very well. Selah. Okay, you said it very, very well about the emotional interaction and how books let us explore our emotions. That if something is super intense, even if it's, it could be stubbing your toe, but it gives people nightmares, there has got to be some way to express that and say, this has extremely emotionally intense reactions. Be prepared. Okay, not a trigger warning, some sort of idea of how to gatekeep books without gatekeeping people's sexuality, without shaming them for the things that they use to explore their emotional needs. One of my oldest daughter, who's 28, reads Lisa Gardner, okay, who you can find on any bookshelf in America. You can find in the grocery store, and Lisa Gardner gives her nightmares and makes her cry for a week. She apparently needs that emotional catharsis, and she needs that reaction with what the heroines are going through. But that's a rough thing to put yourself through in a book you pick off the shelf at the grocery store. So I would like us to look at ways to maybe, and I don't want to say trigger warnings, because that's just, it's so overused and it seems
I think
so
a
trite.
content warning is always a good idea. This content may not be suitable if you are averse to non-consensual and violence and sexual violence and
Well, I mean,
so
we've got
give somebody a reason, give them a reason to say, oh, okay, I think this might be too much for me, and make the choice. So it's an informed consent issue.
Yeah, but that's only as informed as the people making the thing. We're rewatching some old shows. You should be shocked at the warnings on, wait for it, Heart to Heart. Sexual situations, violence, some strong language. I'm like, it's Heart to Heart. This wasn't anything. This wasn't dangerous in the 80s. Why is it dangerous now? Okay,
see, what gets me is smoking.
No one smoked. No one smoked in Heart to Heart. No one was smoking, and they were very big on animal rights, as Stephanie Power. But
so Lucienne, we started going down the path of talking about fear.
Yes.
Because, I mean, again, this is a lot of the time what it boils down to is the fear of exposing, and generally it's done for kids, of course. But, I mean, we've even seen legislatures try to go after the ability of people to just physically sell a book in the bookstores. Now, that has not been so successful mostly. But from a fear standpoint, from a motivational standpoint, what are the ideas? What are the things that you're looking at here that drive people to try to say, no, you shouldn't know that. You shouldn't have access to that. What are the ideas from your perspective and knowing what you do professionally? What are the things that kind of push this down that road?
Well, when I would listen to some of my more conservative-minded patients in attempting to keep an open mind, I would remember the wisdom of my mother that said, every accusation is a confession. And to listen to that, you people are this, you people are, you're disgusting, you're doing this X, Y, and Z to us. Are okay, well, let's talk about that. Where's that coming from? Where'd you get that idea? Where'd you get the idea that a drag queen just doing his or her entertainment show being grooming? Where'd you get that idea? Who gave that to you? Mm-hmm. I ask questions about what those things mean to the person who's asking or accusing. What are they really saying? And I find that when I get a review from something or from somebody on one of my books and something stands out to them, like a very violent scene where somebody is decapitated and they concentrate on that. Where's that coming from? Did that got your attention more than the scene of XYZ? So tell me more about that. And I think that a lot of people who want to ban books and want to keep people from physically appearing in places are based off of their fears that their pulse rate goes up a little when they see somebody who might be, oh, I can't like another guy. I mean, but he's so pretty and I can't. Oh, so their pulse rate goes up every time they get too close. So, the best way to prevent that is to project and accuse and say they don't belong here. They are not part of this.
So Lisa,
I was just going to add to that. It makes me wonder too, how you, Jim, you talking about the stats that some books were banned for racism. I've noticed, and like Jerry Craft got a couple graphic novels banned in a lot of places for like racism against white people because it was about Black students having an experience in a white private school. So I'm wondering, piggybacking off of what Lucienne said, if that's also fear-based,
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. That doesn't just apply to sex and sexuality, but also, on much deeper level. Well, that's deep, but on further levels as far as the human experience as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if you take a look at the top 50, you can definitely see some trends there.
Yeah.
So Lisa, from an academic standpoint, when we came in, you said, I'm trying to get as many students to read as many banned books as possible. From an academic standpoint, how is it treated for you these days? Both trying to promote getting banned books out there. How's it seen from students? How's it seen from a university perspective? And what's your thoughts around just the entire idea of dealing with banned books?
Well, I mean, I'm dealing with adults, so it's a little bit different from that perspective. But I mean, I'm teaching a short stories and novels course this semester. And I mean, in the first lecture, I'm like, fiction is how we learn about other people. We learn how to, get along in the world and how people relate. And, it's so important to learn about the other. So, I sort of take it from that standpoint. And I mean, I'm drawn to things that are relevant to what's going on. I mean, I don't think you can get a lot more relevant than The Handmaid's Tale right now. And I just actually read Genderqueer for the first time last year, I guess, around this time. And I mean, just captivated. I mean, it's such an amazing book. Should it be, taught in a primary school? Probably not. But, I definitely think that, I mean, you were going to say this, Jim, that, we have no problem finding rating systems for like television and movies and everything else. I don't have a problem with, putting a rating system on something or, placing it in, a young adult or an adult section. But I also don't think that we need to place guards. And if we have a student or, a child or a young adult who is mature enough and is looking for that content, is looking to make those connections with somebody and say, oh, look, there's somebody that's like me. This is amazing. Yeah. I think that's just so important. I mean, the way we make good citizens in a democracy is to have as much access to other viewpoints and to be as informed as possible. And, what better way to do that than through books, which are often fun to read.
Yeah.
Well, oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say it's funny of all. I mean, because I every now and then I tick somebody off, even someone who is predisposed to like my genre. One of the most vitriolic letters I ever got was when I had, and it was based on true experiences with people in my family who are mentally ill. They had been weaponized watching Fox News. And I mentioned, I had that become a thing in one of my stories. And this person was so angry at me for mentioning that people could be weaponized by watching the news, that they renounced my books forever, wrote a 1-star review, and went on the internet and badmouthed me for at least a week.
How much did that help sales?
Oh God, I hope it helped them a lot. I want to be known as someone who said Fox News is the devil. But that idea of the other, Fox News tends to distort the other very, very, very much, and to attack, in their view, this institution because it doesn't look fondly on the other. I found that to be fascinating. Yeah. That Fox News 9 times out of 10 would have banned my book, would have called me a terrible person for writing a book about porn kids trying to grow up to be men. And this person would defend this news source. And it was right before He Who Shall Not Be Named rose to power, and that they didn't see the connection. They didn't see the connection that banning this viewpoint of the other was that these things connected, and that they were defending the institution that was going to hurt a lot of people that say I would write about.
I think
the most recent like attack in the schools that came through where I live in the Piedmont region of North Carolina, was a small group of parents who were trying to get basically any books with any gay characters kicked out of our library. These weren't even being taught like to a whole class. They were just in the library available for kids to read. And I was really proud of my school district because the school board stance on it was, well, let's look at the situation in this book. If it was a boy and a girl instead of 2 girls or 2 boys, would you find it objectionable, the level of sex in this book? And in most cases, the answer had to be no. These were not graphic. These are middle schoolers, right? So mostly we're talking about a first kiss, or just talking about how lovely you think someone is. Lots of romantic talk, not lots of dancing in the sheets. So it just completely folded, and I was really proud because I don't live in the most liberal of places. We're in kind of quasi-liberal pocket in a very conservative state, but I was worried. I was worried enough that I wrote a letter to the school board, making sure that they knew that if that's the stance they were going to go, that maybe I ought to take my child to a school where they were allowed to learn about all people.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I think just one more thing about what Lisa had said, accessibility is so important, especially when she said seeing somebody like me, because a lot of kids, a lot of young people, and a lot of adults go through life thinking I must be all alone in this opinion. And then they read a book that suddenly somebody else shares their opinion, and they can't believe it. They can't get over it. Suddenly they're not alone.
And non-punitive accessibility.
Yes.
that people can be gay or neurodivergent or any of the many things that books give us access to, without there being death at the end,
Right.
with there being a happy ending and with them winning. Because I think if my two guys had died at the end of my book, they probably would have let me teach there.
Yeah.
That would have changed everything.
Mm-hmm.
So Walt,
Hello.
we're going to finally get down to you.
No, I'm just listening.
So, from your perspective, kind of what's your experience? What are your thoughts in terms of banned books, especially considering the stuff you're writing, some of your experiences as well?
Yeah. One thing that never really ceases to amaze me is how the same sort of sectors and voices of the most censorship and the most active role in censoring books are also sort of the same voices that label like millennials and the newer generations as snowflakes. And, when I was a kid, like I worked like 40 hours, blah, 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 and I was told whatever. And it's like, okay, so if you're going to like have that attitude where it's like, well, we're not going to shelter our kids, we're going to let them experience life, and we're going to let them get bumps and bruises and learn a couple things the hard way, and make mistakes and be exposed to things. Not necessarily in like an unhealthy way, but I mean, I'll put it to you this way. I saw Fox and the Hound when I was 6, and I cried so hard that I got the entire theater to cry with me. That's the Fox and the Hound. Come on. It was pretty bad. But it's funny to me because it's like there's this books and media and these subjects and these topics and these fundamental aspects of human nature have these sort of like striations where it's like you shouldn't have access to this, you shouldn't have access to that, but you should also work 5 hours every day after school, and you should, blah, 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 so on and so forth. So it's like there's this hypocrisy that kind of goes along with it. And, you hear that a lot from, especially, being a Gen Xer, and, no offense to the boomers present here or whatever, but, I get into quite a bit of, quite a few arguments with my mother and, about, what this book is and so on and so forth. She read my book, and the first thing I heard from her was, she called me up and she's like, "Are you okay? Like, are you all right? Like, we'll just talk about some stuff." And I'm like, "No, Mom, you're actually the last person I would like to talk to." But the other thing I was going to say too is that context matters a lot, especially with like specific situations, and that run the gamut. And when it's presented in just like a gratuitous manner, like as authors, like we include events and character development to serve a story. And when something is included just for the hell of like that, like I don't mean to keep bringing that up, but it just so far out of place. It's like, Steve, like, what was going on that night, dude? Let's get
cocaine.
Cocaine, yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Put the vial down, buddy. But I mean, just to give you an example, because like, I grew up in the 80s, and with cable or whatever, there was Cinemax, and on Friday and Saturday nights they would play like whatever the diddly daddly movies.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing
Skinemax, yes.
Skinemax, yep. And they would be like scrambled, so it'd be like flipping back and forth between stations. Not me, somebody else.
Me.
But I remember seeing like my family came home from like a function or something like that, and like my parents went upstairs or whatever, and I clicked on the TV and Lady Chatterley's Lover was on. Now, Lady Chatterley's Lover is a D.H. Lawrence novel, and when I saw it at 12, 13 years old, I was like, oh my God. And I was just completely like taken aback what I was looking at. And my sister came downstairs and she's like, "Get that off. What if Mom sees you?" And I'm like, "I don't care." But like, I got older and, went to college and I read the novel and I was flipping through it and I was like, it's has sexual content, but I didn't see how it got from the book to Skinamax. And I think that the context that things are presented matters a lot. A couple weeks ago, we were talking about, Lucienne and I were talking about the New York Times crossword puzzle that came out on a Sunday that basically just had a, not to shift away from the topic, but it had a swastika in it. I mean, you'd have to be like blind to not see it.
Yeah.
And the guy who put it in, like, absolutely blatantly put that in and just tried to like slip one by the goalie and to see how many people he could, upset by it. And those are the kinds of things that you have to take on a case by case basis where it's like, okay, this is inappropriate. This shouldn't be in a national newspaper or worldwide newspaper, especially something like the New York Times that's read by millions of people, and they take a look at it. And it's almost like if they didn't see it, that it would somehow register like somewhere in their brain, like, I don't know why I remember that crossword puzzle from 2 months ago, but I don't know. But what we talked about in our little announcement for whatever, our company, was basically like that. We're not going to reject content as long as it's like based on serving the story and it's in a narrative perspective. And as authors and writers and teachers and so on and so forth, it becomes incumbent upon us as people like working in these particular fields to be able to disseminate that and to be able to, label those things and be able to talk about it.
And my proper context.
Right. And on my book, I like took it upon myself to write on the back, like specific things that were in there. Like, this is in here. This is in here. This is in here. This is not for everybody. If you open this book, you're on your own. Don't come. Like, I tried to tell you type of deal. And it still doesn't. And it still doesn't matter because people are like, oh, what about that story, dude? Cannibalism. And I'm like, well, it's to prove a point. And they're like, yeah, but still, like, can't you write about something better? I'm like, no.
You have to slow cook right.
Yeah, exactly. I'll write a recipe book.
Yeah.
So, go ahead, Lisa.
I was just going to say, I think this point came up earlier in the fact that, your audience has to sort of get what you're doing, right? And the first thing that always comes to my mind is A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift, where he proposes eating the babies because of the Irish famine. And he's being completely satirical, but he was roasted alive. Sorry about that.
Oh, I love it.
He's being serious, right?
Yeah. Lisa, one of the stories in my book is very, very similar to that.
Awesome.
Where it's like set in like a 1984 type of thing or whatever. And people have to do what they have to do to survive. And I think that if we don't acknowledge those darker aspects of the human psyche, and that's inherent in all of us, and nobody's completely good and nobody's completely evil. Yep. And to sort of make pretend that the shadow, to use the Jungian term, to make pretend that doesn't exist within all of us and sort of, whatever, you do so at your own peril. And Lisa, that's been my personal experience. And I'm the one wearing a fear t-shirt. So,
and also the satire.
I was just going to say real quick. So Lisa, I know you're probably going to have to hop in a minute for the other panel. Do you want to let everybody where to find you, and what banned book do you tell everybody they need to go out and grab right now?
Oh gosh. It's kind of a toss up between Genderqueer and The Handmaid's Tale for me. As the ones that you've got to read. Genderqueer is it's amazing. It's just so amazing. And Handmaid's Tale has been around for a long time. So I think a lot of people are familiar with it, and the television show is great. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, DeanGirl1, and Spoiler TV under Lisa Macklem, if you're interested in my reviews of The Handmaid's Tale and The Walking Dead and a bunch of other stuff. The Boys, another one that I'm really, I just love. That's about it.
Well, thanks for hopping in, Lisa. Sorry you had to jump off, but
Yeah, I'm sorry, Archie. This has been a great discussion. It was great meeting you all. Wally, I'm going to look for your book. That sounds amazing. Thanks, guys.
Bye.
So I'm going to throw an open question out to the floor and then probably run when I ask this. When we look at this idea of things that, because again, a lot of this boils down to what's the social contract we live in the society, because we see different places put different restriction, different kind of ban or different kind of bans. And one of the things that we kind of hinted on early on was largely violence tends to be okay. The question becomes about sex. And, the ideas of gender and relationships. And so what does this kind of tell you in terms of what it is that people are doing to ban books and why? And I think, just spoiler, it probably does go back to what are we afraid of? But, in terms of what your thoughts are, what are the ideas for you that really come up as to how do we address this and how do we look at things from a societal standpoint?
I think we have to accept the fact that the Puritans put their mark on this country stronger than anybody else, anywhere, ever. Americans in general, violence is okay. You can cut off someone's head, but you can kill him, but don't kiss him, right? Yeah. But it isn't just before we think it's all sex. Oh, no, don't you dare discuss a different kind of religious viewpoint either. So we've got a lot of that going on. It's exactly what Lucienne and Wally were saying. It's all about fear. It's all fear-based. And I'm going to go back to, I don't think there is anything. Tipper Gore gave us ratings for albums. It just did let you know which albums had the good words, right? I mean, it didn't change anything, okay? It changed nothing. It created a big hullabaloo for a while. And now content has explicit. So some artists will do without, the radio edit clean version and the explicit version. And I always make sure I buy the explicit version.
Yes.
But I just don't think there's any way you go around it. I was a precocious child and I was reading way, way, way above my age range. So the whole, that should have been in YA or adult did not matter to me. Was that interesting? I'm reading through an entire library, driving librarians crazy, asking for the next book in a series that came out last week, but I already read it. So where's the next one? Yeah. Karma's a bitch. I'm 5 years later. So 12-year-old B is yelling. But my mother didn't ban anything for me. It was, if you don't understand it, then you're probably too young. Jaws came out when I was in junior high, and somebody stole the book off his mom's nightstand. Okay, and that book traveled through my junior high, and it was handed from kid to kid. Here's, I said, read chapter 8. Read chapter 8. So I read chapter 8. I got none of chapter 8. Chapter 8 made no sense to me whatsoever. I read the book again. I'm a really fast reader, so I was handing me in. And I read chapter 8 again. I was a grown-up girl who had already done the deed many, many times before. It clicked to me that when Hooper is saying, and when Hooper and Mrs. Brody are talking about her fantasies, he's like, is he big? And she's like, yes, he's big. I'm imagining, Shaquille O'Neal. I'm not anything else. I don't know. I was like in a market when all of a sudden I went, oh, that's what that meant. It didn't affect my opinion of the book. I had no freaking concept of what was going on. I knew they were doing something. I just was clueless. Other kids knew what was going on, right? I was the person who had no censorship in my life. I had no idea what was going on. So it all depends on the individual, a child or adult, for what they're going to love and what they're going to hate. And I don't think we can regulate that. And I don't think any kind of system is ever going to be right, because the same people who want to control our thoughts, our bodies, and our bedrooms also want to control what we read. And we can't get rid of these people. Much as I have plans for that, we can't get rid of them. We just have to keep playing.
Yeah, when I was a kid, my parents were fairly permissive. I was in the back of the car when we watched Jaws, and it didn't matter because I still saw Quinn get bitten in half, and I still had nightmares. But I mean, they also took me to see The 9 Lives of Fritz the Cat, which right now would rank as child abuse.
Yes,
my
were we
Yes. Yes.
But in spite of all that, my dad actually read a book because he would read them on break at work, and he was a nurse and he was working the night shift, and he would come home and pass them on to my mom. And there was one that was just the rankest trash. And I do mean that sincerely, as in I can't even believe that this was put on the paper. The sex scene was,
what was the name of that again?
Degrading. and I know this, of course, because my stepmom
You read it twice.
said, "Oh, that's terrible. Take it out to the trash barrel and burn it."
What book
And then I realized
Yeah,
I
really?
had to burn it because our house
Can we get
wasn't
the
that
title?
Yeah, we don't want the title.
I wish I could remember the title, but it was just horrible. It was like I said, it was degrading and it was racist and it was just horrible. And those words are
That's
seared,
not
not
fun.
the title, but the scene is seared on my consciousness forever because I had to throw it in the trash bin and watch it burn. Telling kids they cannot read a thing is an absolute guarantee that they will pass it around like chapter 8 of Jaws,
True.
which, yes, I read in the 6th grade too.
Wait, one of the things that I remember when I was in middle school was Flowers in the Attic was the book that was going around amongst everybody.
Yes.
That's
My
the one I've
sisters
been
were
trying
all
to bring
about
up.
that series.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And
Yep.
I got
It was
that
a
one at my school
paragraph.
library. My school library had the whole
Oh,
series.
wow.
and
Oh my
my
God,
dad
they were
read them all.
handing
Yeah, mine did too.
Candy. Yeah.
So
Yep.
one of my experiences, and I was the instigator in this, which goes further to prove the hypocrisy of, people wanting to sanitize and Puritan culture and all that. So I'm a minister's child, and not really part so much anymore. Yeah, that tells you all you need to know.
It really did. You know where all the bad, good stuff
We
is.
do. But so by the time I got to confirmation when I was 13, I had literally heard all the old standards, all the greatest hits 90,000 times. So while my father was, given the lesson for confirmation, Selah had he also bought a bunch of Bibles and bought about 10 electronic Bibles. He would hoard stuff, whatever. So I stole one or two of them and I would use it to look up all the dirty parts of the Bible. And those would be the parts that I would read and the super violent parts. And then I would tell all my friends about it. So yeah.
This book has everything.
I learned a whole lot
really
about
does.
information that was never supposed to be learned. So
Other than things like Numbers, which is super boring, and Ezra,
Right,
which is
right.
also super boring because they're listing their census material. There is so much sex and violence and betrayal in the Bible.
oh, yeah.
Yeah, I had a conservative friend who was like, she's like, I can't. I said, have you ever read the book? And she's like, well, I'm like, oh yeah, read the book. And she's like, oh, I can't. Every time I see her, she's like, and now I'm on the part with David, and I'm like,
Just
oh yeah,
flip to the Song of
Sin's
Solomon,
law.
and there you go.
Yeah.
And
I
for
saw,
the record,
That's God's chosen dude.
I saw a video with a guy who would walk around and describe some Old Testament stories.
Yeah.
And tell people that the book with this story is in the library. Should it be banned?
Yeah.
And then, the big
Yeah.
reveal is that we're talking about the Old Testament.
Yeah, exactly.
well,
That remembers the last temptation of
and
Christ.
Man offers up his
Yes,
yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
The last
My
temptation of
mom
Christ.
absolutely flipped
Because-
about that book. This is not completely just went apoplectic.
Mhm.
And the thing of it all is that it was I didn't read the book. I watched the Willem Dafoe movie because I'm a Willem Dafoe.
Yeah.
But it was the most realistic presentation of that story to me that seemed like it was the most likely to have actually occurred. It's not Jesus of Nazareth grew up in this bubble. It's there was probably a girl in the house down the way or whatever, and he was 14 at one time, so you know what I mean, and so he was supposed to be whatever, but I just think it always comes down to a certain level of what's acceptable in what context and what narrative fits to that person.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say that for those of us, doing LGBTQ,
Yeah.
The one thing that is not true in the Bible is that marriage is between one man and one woman. Okay.
Yes.
I really
Especially-
like
there are
telling people
many-
about the centurion story and how that's mistranslated. I'm like the best worst person to. So, yeah.
I mean, I'm sorry. Lot is having sex with his daughters and telling everybody that they came on to him, and that's considered
What?
okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of skeevy, bro.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, on that note, so before we get out of here, I want you to go and make sure that you tell us. We're going to go just around the table. Make a recommendation of a banned book that you think everybody needs to pick up and why. So Samantha, let's just start with you.
So I'm going to go with Toni Morrison, and I'll go with Beloved because I just read it for like the 5th or 6th time this past October. And it is the best book I've ever read about slavery, and it's a wonderful ghost story, and it's starkly honest and difficult and challenging in all the best ways. And I think it's something that most people could benefit from having read.
Salem?
I would say I'm going to go with my theme of the day here, but I'm going to go with Mouse.
You stole mine.
It's an extremely important book, I think.
Yes.
It proves that comics are not, relegated to children. They're not necessarily a child-only medium. It's also very important to recognize, that the Holocaust happened. It's a very deep story, not just about the father's experience through the Holocaust, but how survivor's guilt, trickles down through generations. There was a big thing about being banned again within the past year or two for really minuscule nudity and like mention of loss of virginity, which is dumb. And also like disrespect of a son to his father, which is the book is really good at, and I would get the complete collection, by the way. It comes in 2 volumes, but get the complete collection. It's going to be a much easier read. It's very important to understand how that survivalist guilt and emotion and trauma can be passed from generations, and how the son was trying to cope and learn what happened to his father, but also deal with, his father in the present and his own life. So it's a very good look at the Holocaust and intergenerational trauma. Plus, it leads to much broader conversations about, some countries got upset about how they were portrayed. You could, college classes have been taught about this. You could really examine this from a million different angles, but definitely read Mouse.
And John has been giving those away to teachers. If you were at a convention, he's had Mouse by the crate full that he's been giving away at conventions. So, Jenny, how about you? What's your one you're going to pull out of the crate?
I got 3. Diary of Anne Frank, Fahrenheit 451, and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn. Yes, I've got old school on those, but it still shocks me the number of people who haven't read those books. I can understand why Fahrenheit 451 is banned, only because the people that are banning it approved everybody burning the books. Okay. So I get that, but Fahrenheit 451 by Ray Bradbury is really, really good. It's terrifying in different ways from a lot of other dystopian science fiction, because it could happen so easily. And it's just really an excellent book. And there I go on the fritz. I don't know if you guys can see me or hear me.
We can still hear you.
Okay, there we go. Yeah, see, it's trying to ban me. The Diary of Anne Frank is excellent. I don't understand why it's banned, other than the fact that, some people don't like the fact that the Holocaust was freaking horrible. And The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, which is very telling in that, depending on how you read it, you really, if you're able to read it and look at it, the actual hero of the book is Jim, the escaping slave. He's the reason Huck is surviving and everything else. And it's very interesting. And it's also hard to read because if they haven't changed the dialogue and the narrative, which they don't, you're seeing the N-word constantly. And in some ways it can inure you to, and in other ways it's very shocking. So I think those three, they're older and I don't know how ignored they get. They're always on the list every year. But those three are the ones I strongly recommend. If you haven't read them by now, take a moment and read all three.
Amy?
Well, my old school is To Kill a Mockingbird, which ends up I always would challenge the kids. Okay, so we know that Tom Robinson didn't do it. Who did? And by the time they hit that goes to what we were saying, that every accusation is a projection or a confession. And they start to really look at taking people's word for it. And my more modern, and I'm going to botch this. I believe it's The Pink Crayon, which is for children, and it's a book by a trans author addressing, and it's very sweet. It's about I believe it's about a kid who doesn't, or a trans that doesn't feel okay being blue and would like to be pink. And that's it. That's really it. And it opens kids up for the idea that what everybody is telling them they should be is perhaps not what they were meant to be. And that's all. I mean, it doesn't talk about their no-no places. It just talks about a crayon who is not happy being blue.
Lucienne?
Okay, well, Mouse has been taken by a very astute author, so I will back her up on her recommendation. Also, just to add to the many points that Mouse makes, it also talks about inherited trauma and second-generation trauma and how we inherit these PTSD can be inherited from those who survived before us. And my other recommendation is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. And he is a gay or queer Black man, written a nonfiction memoir manifesto sort of detailing that is geared toward young adults. It was called to be banned for sexual explicit LGBTQ IA fiction, or not fiction, but themes. And I highly recommend it because it's great to get other perspectives on life.
Wally?
So I'm going to do a hard right turn and bring up a topic that didn't come up. You mentioned it at the onset as being a very, very large source of banned books. And those are books that refer to drug and alcohol use. Mm-hmm. So my book is Thomas De Quincey, Confessions of an Opium Eater. Basically, with that book, he invented the genre of addiction literature. And full disclosure, I'm in recovery myself. And I think that you end up with a lot of romanticizing and making that lifestyle glamorous, especially with films and so on and so forth. And that particular work for me was beautifully written. It's Thomas De Quincey. And he has his poetry and his style, but there's also this pervading sense of being trapped and the desperation of someone who struggles with addiction. It's something that I have in the past, no longer do so, but it is something that is destroying our country without a doubt. With the opiate plague, and so on and so forth. And I think that by vilifying these works by these people who have struggled with these particular issues and who are very, very raw and very brutal and very honest about it, and labeling that as something that people shouldn't read is only it has that same effect where a kid or or teen or whatever is going to be like, oh well, that seems cool. I saw Hunter S. Thompson, so let's go, like that sort of thing. So it's something that definitely should be spoken for, and it's required reading for me. So.
Well, and I'll slip my own in because somebody left me in charge. I don't know who was that stupid, but I'm actually going to hit a couple of the old classics myself. The first of which is 1984. All I'm going to say is read it for context. The second one I'm going to throw out there, and again, these are all three of the ones I'm going to put out there are three of them I was given to read in school. The second one is Slaughterhouse-Five. And yes. I'll give an honorable mention there to Joseph Heller and Catch-22 as well, because there's so much context presented in history and over time. And these are all books that I was given to read in school that now are largely regarded as, oh yeah, no, we don't want anybody seeing and remembering these things. And then the last one I'm going to throw out there is going to be Color Purple. I think that's one that is definitively through time one of those things that gives us context to the period and gives us context even still now. So I slipped in a bonus there because somebody left me in charge. But before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys and your books that are yet to be banned, but give them time. So Samantha?
Hello there, I'm Samantha Bryant again, and I write the Menopausal Superhero series as well as short form horror. And you can find all my work. I have a bit.ly that'll take you to my Amazon page, bit.ly/Samantha Bryant, capitals on both my names. And for social media, you could just Google me. I'm on most of them, at least some of the time. If you put Samantha Bryant author, you'll find me. You should put author because otherwise you're going to get an actress, and I just don't really do high heels and ball gowns.
Selah?
All right. My site is selahjanel.com. I will spell it because, SelahJanel.com. I'm on Facebook as author SJ. Still on Twitter, debating other places to go. That is Selah Janel. Instagram, SelahJanel99. You can find my pieces on Amazon. I have a story in a folk horror collection from Erie River coming out sometime this year. So check me out.
Jenny?
Hi, my website is www.ginikoch.com. I'm on Twitter. I'm on Pinterest. I'm all over the place on Facebook, including my Facebook fan page, Hairspray and Rock and Roll, where you can sign up for my Hook Me Up newsletter, which is free. I look like I'm on Instagram. I'm not, but I really look like it. And if you're sending messages, I still can't see them. And my newest release is a short story in Unidentified Funny Objects 9, which just came out a month ago, something like that. But I'm all over the place and pretty easy to find.
Amy?
Let's see. Amy Lane Romance is my website. I am on Facebook. Reader interaction on my Facebook group is Amy Lane Anonymous. Those are my basic places. I'm on Terribly Political on Twitter. Don't follow me on Twitter.
Lucienne?
Well, I'm going to follow Amy on Twitter because she told me not to. And I'm kidding. Let's see. I am on Facebook on Lucienne LeBeau, author. You can find me facebook.com/Silver Hollow Stories. And you can find me at silverhollowstories.com. And all of my books should be banned.
Wally?
I forgot to mention
I
have a new release today.
Oh,
I have a new release today.
Oh my goodness.
It's the tech. That's my newest release is the tech. It came out today. It's gay leverage.
Little things like that. Wally?
You can find me on Facebook as WP Quigley and at ascendantpublishing.com because her and I are on that site too. So we're getting things going. I'm going to be starting publishing a trilogy starting in July that is centered around neurodivergent people, of which I am a card-carrying member. And Ascendant is spelled ASCENDENT, not ANT. And there's a story behind it, but that's for another time. And and I got my book, Chaos Heaven, and double feature number 1 is available on the site. It's a magazine, and this is my author's warning, content warning, the stories that are in there. Yikes!
Yes, as the editor, I confirm it must be duly warned.
Yeah.
And I've been
really
trying.
Nice guy.
I've been trying to rope this crowd in all night long. I've been your host, Jim Nettles. You can find me at jamespnettles.com, authoressentials.net, authoressentialsworkshops.com, the Speculative Fiction Academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course, here at ConTinual. And we will see all of you guys again soon. Go buy a banned book or file a protest on any one of the authors that you see. We all want to get them all banned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.